welcome to Books on the Go. I have 5 minutes before I have to go and pick up the children from school, so this might turn into 1 minute mini reviews. It was going to be an October wrap-up or part-way through October wrap-up, so let's see how we go. I'm just going to run through the books I've read so far in October, and the first one is The Lost Man by Jane Harper, which is coming out this week, I believe, in Australia, and we've just done it on the podcast on Books on the Go, so that will be coming out tonight. I think I'll upload. Really good is The Lowdown. This is the story of Nathan and his family in the middle of outback Australia. So they live in a remote part of central Australia near the desert. So it's west Queensland, southwest Queensland, or almost northern South Australia perhaps, but it's very isolated. So they're in a cattle station. The family, his brother Cameron and his family live on one big sort of farmhouse and station, and then Nathan lives adjacent, but in the next house along, which is 3 hours drive away. That's how far apart the properties are. So it's incredibly atmospheric. It opens with Nathan and his younger brother Bub, who find that Cameron has died in the middle of nowhere. Basically, he's left his car and walked to this headstone, which has given him a tiny bit of shade, and then he hasn't survived, because in those conditions without water or hat, you have no chance. So it appears that he's taken his own life, but it's all a bit mysterious because he had left the house saying goodbye and he'll be back with this and that. So he'd sounded as if he was intending to be back, and they're unclear. He was always a happy-go-lucky kind of guy out of the three of them, so it's sort of odd that if he had been depressed, they hadn't known that, and why was that? So Nathan investigates, and you meet the other. He sort of then goes to stay at the farmhouse, and it's Christmas time, so he's spending time with them anyway there, and you get to know the family and a couple of other characters who live there, so some backpackers who are casual employees. And there's just such a sense of mystery that keeps deepening, and new layers keep being peeled off as you find out more about the characters. And the whole time there's this real sense of place, and because it's so isolated, it really sharpens both the mystery but also the fact that the characters depend on each other. And you know that one of them must have done it, because there's no one else for thousands of miles around if it is indeed a murder. So it's really good. I think it's better than The Dry, and I didn't read Force of Nature, but they were the Aaron Falk detective series that Jane Harper had done, and this is a standalone. Very good. I highly recommend it. Very atmospheric. So that's The Lost Man, and then a complete change of pace, $1 Billion Whale by Tom Wright and Bradley Hope. So this is the story of Joe Low, who was a Malaysian fraudster, and he siphoned money in conjunction with the Prime Minister of Malaysia and some Saudi investors. He arranged for the Prime Minister or other politicians to set up a fund called 1MDB, and then he arranged, and they sort of thought the money was being invested in various things, but a lot of it he arranged to be paid to him through other bank accounts in Switzerland and the Cayman Islands, and just took the money and used it to have enormous parties. So for one 8-month period, he spent $85 million on partying, amazing story, and he funded the Wolf of Wall Street movie. And one of my favourite scenes in this book is when Jordan Belfort, who's the Wolf of Wall Street guy, and I read that book, so I have a sense of, his character too. When he came into a party where they're gambling in the casino, and he sees how much money's being spent and thrown around, and he said, this must be a scam, because you don't throw money away like that if you've had to work to earn it. And he didn't want to have anything to do with it. So that really says it all. I think if Jordan Belfort thinks it's too dodgy, amazing, a really interesting story. But more importantly, the book is well written, and they've researched it extensively. And because some of these deals are quite convoluted, but really they've distilled it very well into sort of layman's terms, so that it's an easy read and quite pacey, and they do short chapters, so you move quickly from one sort of scene to the next, but at the same time it's quite rigorous and detailed. And one of the most striking things that I found was the role of the banks, and so he used Goldman Sachs for a large part of the deals, and they made enormous sums of money, so $200 million on one deal and so on. But the way that they would turn a blind eye, knowing that there were questions about where this money was coming from, and where it was going to, the fact that they sort of aided and abetted that really surprised me. So really interesting. I recommend it, especially if you like financial books or that sort of thing. If you enjoyed The Wolf of Wall Street and that kind of genre, but I think it's better than that in that it's not, that was a bit self-serving, that sort of an autobiography, whereas this is two journalists who I think they won an award for their investigation of this story. So very good, and it's quite staggering the details in it. So that's Billion Dollar Whale. And then another complete change of pace. Which one did I read next? We'll do this one. 9 Perfect Strangers by Liane Moriarty. So this is her new book, which has just come out. It's already been optioned by Nicole Kidman to become a TV series, which I think she will star in, which will be fantastic. So Liane Moriarty wrote Big Little Lies is probably her most famous, because that was adapted into the Netflix series with Reese Witherspoon and Nicole Kidman, among others, and won an Emmy Award. But Liane Moriarty's written 9 books. So her first one was 3 Wishes, which I really liked. We did that years ago for book club in Adelaide, but she's a Sydney author, so a lot of her books are set in Sydney, and the more recent ones have been amongst the school parents community. She does a very good, she does good observations of those people. So it's suburban realism, and there's often a mystery as well, and she's very good at keeping you turning the page. She has said with this one she had fun writing it, and I think that shows through, because it's a really funny book. I was laughing out loud quite often. So I had that sense that she's just having fun, and it's set at a health retreat, so you have 9 characters who go to sort of separately go to this health retreat run by a quite extraordinary woman called Masha, who I think will be the Nicole Kidman character, but we'll wait and see. And the question is, will they change their lives by going there for 10 days? And it ends up being a question of whether they'll survive, because it all comes unstuck. I thought it was a bit too long, and it takes a long time to set up because she sort of has to get 9 of them there. So each one has a sort of chapter setting up why they're going there, and then they get there, and it's really funny and really interesting, and all those questions about wellness and the wellness gurus being the new gods or the new religion, and some of the reasons they're there are quite poignant. So there are some touching moments, and then the sort of last third of it I thought went quite off the rails and a bit mad. So it's not a perfect book, but I think you have to read it in the spirit of fun, and ideally on holidays, on a beach, on a plane, something like that. It'll just keep you really entertained, and I think it'll be a good one for the screen. So that's 9 Perfect Strangers by Liane Moriarty. I'm so running out of time, and I won't be able to do this one justice, but here we have Moon Tiger by Penelope Lively. So I had never read Penelope Lively before. I picked it up, I think, when I was in London, and they were featuring this, and it must have been because of the Golden Booker. This was on the shortlist to win the 50-year Golden Booker award, which it didn't win, but it was a good excuse to pick it up, and it's a nice small book that's easy to take with you. So I think you can see from the amount of flags that there are so many passages in this that I wanted to take notes of, just because the writing is so good. So it's a real step up in quality from a lot of books that I've read. It's the story of Claudia, who is a really strong-willed, interesting woman, but she's now older and dying, and she's going back over her life, and she's telling it like a history, because she was a historian. So she has this interesting take on how history can be told from so many different angles and points of view, and even her own story could be different if you just told, for example, the story of her body. Her medical history is just one aspect, and then you could tell the history of her career, but that doesn't give you much of the sense of her as a person. And the way that we have different stories, but it all within the one person. So I really liked how she did that, and at the centre of it is her time in Egypt during World War II, where she falls in love, but she loses this sort of great love of her life, and she circles around it. She doesn't get to that straight away, so she starts it, with one story, and then she moves back, and you can almost sense that it's too painful for her to think about, and she does come to it eventually. But I really enjoyed that sense of things that are, a bit like Kurt Vonnegut with Slaughterhouse-5. There's almost, about the Dresden bombing, things that are so painful, they actually become more powerful when they're not put into words. So you get a sense of that. It's very funny at times, and she's scathing, she's got a very sharp sense of humour. So for example, she's been at the front, so she's seen real suffering in this war, and she said her mother back in England had to let go of the domestic servants during that time, and she said brave mother taught herself how to cook, and she would produce these meals, and she's very sarcastic, but also it's more nuanced than that. She does have quite a realistic relationship with her mother, and you get all the sort of family dynamics, and none of it is cliched, which I liked. So yeah, really strong book. That's Moon Tiger by Penelope Lively. And I will have to wrap it up there because I'll be quite late. So I will be back soon with another update of what I'm reading. I hope you're having a good October. It is coming into the autumn readathon now, which I'm also keen to do, and I'm sort of in the middle of my spring books because it's spring here, so I have a lot that I'd like to be reading this week, so we'll see how we go. I'd love to know what you're reading, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.